Welcome to this next messaging on the mindset of folks who are incarcerated and the mindset of those who run the prison system. All right? Again, we are going over this. This is a part of your training because it is important for you to understand that when dealing with the system, right? Remember, when doing remedies on behalf of folks who are incarcerated, you need to understand that because you're going to need to know who you're dealing with when making arguments. Why are they disrupting what you're doing? Why are they not giving this person the treatment? Why are they not paying attention? And why doesn't the person know how to do this themselves, right? Why doesn't the person know what to put in remedies? All these things come into play, and by understanding or paying attention to these lessons of the mindset of those folks is important in getting you there so that you know the extent that you need to go to when it comes to preparing remedies for these folks effectively to get past those who also run the system, right? So you have to get past them, right? You have to make sure that your work is solid enough to make them do what they're supposed to do. All right? So this next example is going to be about a Spanish guy that I helped. Let me just call him a Spanish guy, forgive me. Not necessarily trying to be anything other than, just telling a story. Right, the guy, I don't necessarily remember which country he's from, whether he's from the United States. If he was, he only spoke Spanish, and his English was not that good. The youngsters who took care of this guy kind of like translated for him. Right, so I was in Beaumont, Texas, again. This situation happened in Beaumont, Texas. I was in Beaumont Low with this guy. And I would say this Spanish guy, so older man, probably at the time in his 50s, could possibly be pushing 60s. And he was on the same unit as me. And he was an elder to the younger Spanish guys in the unit. I would say that they looked up to him and looked out for him a lot on the unit, right? And he, let's say, I'm not 100% sure what his crime was. I'm not 100% sure I remember what his crime was, but I would say I believed it to be something in the realm of drugs, right? So maybe he was into drug smuggling or what. Now, that is not necessarily important, what a person crime is, right? But for the context, the full context here, I'm just throwing that in, right? So, however, this guy was on this unit, older man, and he was in a wheelchair. When he came to the unit and met me on the unit. He was in a wheelchair when he arrived on this unit. And he had one good leg and one prosthetic leg, right, when he came onto this unit. So he moved around a lot in a wheelchair, but he had, and that's because he had a prosthetic leg that he wasn't walking on properly. It wasn't the best, right? You could tell it was a bare minimum type of prosthetic leg. I don't know who gave it to him. I kind of understand later on that was most likely provided by the Federal Bureau of Prisons. And he had a good leg that was, healing. It was healed. It was nothing wrong with it. Now, this man had a sickness, however, which was diabetes. Okay? He was a diabetic. And apparently, he was a severe diabetic. Okay, so I was in my cubicle. Again, this is a dorm room setting type facility that I was in. It's a bunch of cubicles, concrete cubicles, iron bed, two men to a cubicle, and I was in my cubicle when the young guys that surrounded this older man brought him to me in his wheelchair. And they brought him up to me and they said to me, look, listen, hi, they called me Trini. They didn't call me David. They said, hey, Trini, what's up? How you doing? Look, we got a serious problem here. We've been taking care of this older man for the past week, about week and a half. We have to bathe him. We have to take him to the showers and everything, to use the toilet and everything. He's been really sick and he's getting worse. And we believe that it's because of a sore that he has on his leg. And so we've been doing all this work for him and he's sick. And we can't get staff to take a look at what he has going on, and he's a severe diabetic. We think that they should be taking him seriously and looking at what he's got going on because, he has a sore, and we saw this sore get worse and bad, and now it's like pussy and all, and we have to help him clean this stuff, and we don't know what we're doing. This stuff doesn't, we need to get him some help. So I thought about what they said to me for a little bit, and I was like, nah, you guys are playing with me. Because if he's a severe diabetic, and automatically my mind goes to the point that he's a severe diabetic because he already has a prosthetic leg. So, right, they say he's a severe diabetic, I'm going to agree right away. He has a prosthetic leg. Maybe most likely that's how he lost that leg, right, because of his diabetic condition. So I'm like, man, this, something don't sound right here, right? Because staff should know this and should be making this guy a priority when it comes to dealing with situations like that. And they were trying to convince me that they took this guy to staff to the medical facility and they didn't look at him. They turned him away. And so that was a hard one for me to swallow. So I had to test that theory myself, right? So I told them, okay, of course I could help, right? They knew I could help because they knew at that time I mastered the art of filing administrative remedies on behalf of myself and others, and I was able to make staff do what they were supposed to do. Right, so they knew that they came to the right person. So I said to them, well, yes, I would love to help you. Of course, we're going to help this guy, but this is what I want you guys to do for me. I told them this, and it was about to be lunchtime too, right? It was about to be lunchtime. So I said to them, I want you guys, please, one more time. I want you to take him to the unit counselor and tell the unit counselor what you just told me. Right, because the unit counselor was there. And then I want you to take him back to the medical department one more time and try to talk to one of them and explain to them what you just told me. And then come back to me and let me know what happened. Right, and so it was about three or four of the Spanish guys. They were really concerned. They all surrounded me. Like on a normal, situation, 4 or 5 guys of a different race surround you, roll up on your cell, concerned, you'd be like, uh-oh, what did I do? Right? But that was not the situation. They came seriously concerned because they really wanted to help the old man. They were seeing him deteriorate. Right? I also glanced down at his foot, and what I saw was not nice. It was not pretty. That stuff looked horrible. Right? So I told them to do that. And so I went to lunch. I told them to do that, and I went to lunch. And I came back from lunch, and I was in my cell. And not too long after, this is probably about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours after, they rolled up with the old man again. And they were like, no luck, man. We did exactly what you said. We told the counselor. The counselor said, okay, yes, you guys take him over to medical. And we did that. We took him over to medical again, and they sent us back. They said, it's not a big deal. He's going to be all right. And they sent him back. And I was like, wow, I can't believe that, right? And you guys got to understand, too, this is me learning the mindset and understanding the systems, right? This is my early days. And so in this process, too, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. This is where, I was getting my experience and my understanding of how these folks operate on both sides, right? And so I said, okay, let me go to work. This man needs help. I understood that if he didn't get help right away, he'll probably lose his leg. So I went to work. I started writing out the remedy. I said what he told me, what they told me. I laid it out in the remedy, and stuff, and putting there. I cited the rules and regulations that said they're supposed to be taking care of this guy, and I kind of also laid it out in a way that let them know that 9 times out of 10, this remedy was going to be exhausted for the purpose of a lawsuit, right? Kind of made sure they understood that, right? And I then, while I put that stuff on the BP8, which is where you're supposed to start, and I attached it to a 9, I said, well, this is a serious matter. This needs to be resolved immediately, and we can't necessarily play around waiting for an 8. I made sure that was clear in the remedy. So I put that on paper. I had them wheel the old man with the remedy over to the counselor so that he could turn that in. And then I went to his computer, and I had him open it up, and I typed what I had in the remedy in the computer and emailed it over to the warden, so I know the warden's staff would see it, all right? And so that's what I did, and what happened next was, again, this is not too long after lunch, I did all this stuff, right? So let's say lunch is usually somewhere between 11 and 11:30. I gave about, so we're talking about somewhere around 2 o'clock now, I'm doing this stuff. And before the end of the workday, talking about 3, 4 in the evening, staff is running around looking for this guy. Why are they running around looking for this guy? Why are they now seeking him to help him out? It's because they understood that they were not doing their job, that they were basically medically neglecting someone who had a severe, illness that could cause him death, and that they would be liable for that if he dies, in the long run. They needed someone to open up their eyes or wake them up, right? And that's what I did with the remedy. Because now what happens with these remedies, it goes on the record, right? It makes things legitimate, and it goes on the record not only of this older man, but also on any of the staff that he interacted with and didn't receive the treatment or the help that he needed. So when they realized that this man was now turning in remedies on his issue, now all of a sudden he legitimately has an issue, right? Before he didn't have no issue because they were just coming and please help him, he's hurting, look at his leg, They didn't care, right? Staff did not care, right? He spoke to the counselor, he spoke to a couple of people in the medical. Every day, there's a couple of days, there's different people at different times. They spoke to a bunch of folks in the medical department. And the medical department, again, is supposed to be full of folks who took an oath to protect folks medically, right? No matter who you are, right? So it doesn't matter if you are a gang member or terrorist, that type of person on the street, or you were robbing a bank and someone died when you were robbing the bank, let's say the police shoot you, when they take you to the medical facilities, medical staff signed an oath that they would protect the medical folks or give treatment no matter who you are, right? And here we have, what I would tell you is with my experience in the system is, I would say not all. So medical staff, you got a lot of them that want to do the right thing and a lot of them that try to help. But I would say that, 50% or so of them, it's just horrible. They just don't care. It's all about a job and just making money. And if the Federal Bureau of Prisons doesn't have a way for them to get their job done, they just chalk it up to, hey, what can I do, right? And that's, to me, that's sad. But that's what happens. And so you have a situation where people who really need some serious help are not getting it because the system is not providing the funding, the sources, and stuff that are needed, and then the staff just get frustrated and throw up their hands, and that's it. And it's, people suffer in prison because of that, right? And so what you have is a situation now where these folks understand that that remedy that I did made things legitimate. Not only that, they understand that this stuff is prepared properly. And whoever did this remedy for this man, because they know he didn't do that, he can't even speak English, right? But here he has a perfect remedy in English, breaking down what's going on and breaking down where they're messing up that needs to be dealt with. And so they knew 9 times out of 10 that it's David Simpson that did that remedy. And that if we don't take care of that, we're going to have a problem. All right. So what happens next is staff running around looking for this guy to now give him the treatment that he needs because he now has a legitimate issue. He has now went about making his or bringing his complaint or his issue to staff in the correct way, so they must take it seriously because they must respond to his remedy, right? When you just go and you complain and you say, I got an issue, and you don't go with a remedy, they're supposed to help you out. But they understand that they don't have to because it's not documented legally and or officially. And so they take advantage of that tremendously. But when you document it, when it's officially and or legally documented in the remedy process, hey, we got to respond to this. We got to be doing stuff. So let's do what we're supposed to do, right? So now they found him, they got him, and they took him out to the hospital, right? They took him out to the hospital. They rushed him out that same day, later on that same day. And I didn't see this guy again for about 2 weeks or so, right? I would say on average. This is what I can remember. About an average, about 2 weeks or so, I didn't see this guy. But one of the things that I knew is, by not seeing him, I knew that the issue he had on his leg was serious and that he was getting treatment because he was in the hospital. One or two of the guys who were taking care of him also saw me and said, yeah, we heard from family and others connected to him that he's in the hospital and that he's doing okay. But that was kind of like came through the grapevine type of thing, right? So that's what I knew. And I would say after about the 2 weeks or so, this guy was back at the facility. Now, I would tell you that based on what I've seen with his foot, the sore on his foot, I would tell you I was expecting that they would have to, because he's a severe diabetic, and an intellectual guess to me was, he would come back with a hole or a sink in his foot or something, because they're going to have to cut away a lot of that rotting flesh. They couldn't leave that there, based on what I've seen, right? Because what I've seen wasn't, I don't even want to try to describe it, right? It was horrible, right? And I believe that they would have to cut away just a little bit of that. So I expected him to come back with his foot bandaged, and his foot is healing, and I expected him to come back and tell me, well, hey, they cut away flesh and stuff. Unfortunately, that is not what happened. What happened when I saw this guy for the first time completely broke my heart. I was devastated, because this guy came back to me and to the unit with 2 amputated legs, right? So the leg that he already had the prosthetic on was cut off from about here, and he had the prosthetic piece that went down, foot that he was supposed to be able to walk on. I never really saw him walk on it. It looked like he just wore it for style. And now he had the same thing, a bandage on his leg, because this part was gone on his second foot, right? He now had 2 amputations, both legs. He lost from here down on that leg because of that sore, because he was a severe diabetic, right? I was heartbroken, because I would have liked to think that I saved this guy's leg. You know, I shouldn't have to get there, but at least that's what I would have liked to thought, right? That I did my job and I saved this guy's leg. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, right? So he lost his leg. And he started with an interpreter again, explaining to me that the doctors told him that had he came to them early, yes, they would have been able to save his leg. And these are the doctors in the hospital, the outside place that he went to, right? The doctor in the prison obviously didn't care, him and his staff. But the doctor in the outside hospital, they said, you know, had you gotten to us in time, you know, a week earlier, a week or so earlier, we would have saved your leg, right? You wouldn't have lost your leg. But unfortunately, you came so late that the rotting and stuff got too far, and in order to save your life, we need to take your other leg. And this guy obviously had to go ahead and agree to allow these folks to take his other leg, because if they didn't, he would lose his life. And that just made me feel way much more worse. Even though, here it is, the young men who were taking care of this guy, who had enough sense to bring him to me, and myself, we were able to save his life, right? But we couldn't save his leg. But that should not have been the case. It shouldn't be upon us, folks who are incarcerated with this guy, to be saving his life and or his leg. It is the responsibility of the staff, the warden and the staff of the prison, to do this. It's their job. They get paid for it. It's written into their responsibilities, right? To save this guy from anything that can hurt him and or kill him, right? And obviously, they were neglecting to do their job at that time, right? So when he told me what the doctors said, I was heartbroken. I was hurt, right? And the other information I got next is even worse, right? So He then proceeds to tell me that, and this is because I'm hearing a lot more from the guy now because he's doing a lot better, right? When they brought him to me the first time, right? Remember, he was sick. He was kind of like out of it, right? And the young man was speaking on his behalf, right? So I didn't have much conversation with the man directly. We were just able to get him to do, the little things that we need him to do, like open the computer and stuff. No, actually, the young guys opened his computer for him. He was out of it. That's what I'm remembering, right? But this time, after 2 weeks, after the emergency surgery that removed his leg and the correct medication and the rest and the proper care that he was receiving in the outside hospital, he bounced back and he was now able to communicate with me. And so now communicating with me, he's telling me his experience and what he's going through. So he told me what the doctors said to him about the fact that we saved his life, but we couldn't save his leg. And he then proceeded to tell me that the leg that he already had that was amputated because of the exact same situation. The exact same situation. What do I mean that was the exact same situation? Okay, well, let me explain it to you. Right? This guy then turns and tells me that he had a sore or a cut on the leg that was first amputated while he was in prison at a different location. And the staff ignored him and didn't give him the treatment and or medication and or care that he needed. And because of that, they got him to the outside hospital late, and when he got there, they took his leg. Right? And I'm like, you for real? I'm like, so staff, the medical staff, didn't just only know he was a severe diabetic and that he could lose his leg, they already knew that they were the cause of the first leg that he lost. Right? They were the cause of the first leg he lost. So they know what they're doing. Right? And so this guy explains to me that he lost the first leg at this prison, the prison that he came from before. And, what happened was, he said after he lost his leg and he healed up or whatever, he had someone who was attempting to do a lawsuit or something on his behalf at that prison, and they kind of like heard it or whatever. And they shipped him away to the prison where he was at now. So he ended up at Beaumont, Texas with me, Beaumont, Texas at the low. So them shipping him was trying to protect himself. And that was truly sad for me to understand and learn that. I was heartbroken to know that people who are supposed to be looking out for you medically, who took oaths to protect people medically, were not doing their job. It's like when you got into prison or when you got that status as a felon and you're in prison, it's like your life and your limbs are no longer important, right? What is important is so-called protecting the community from you. But some of us didn't hurt anyone physically in the community. So what are you protecting? I don't get it, right? But that's their mindset. And this guy lost both legs because of the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Both legs. So, I'm telling you, he wasn't doing any administrative remedies over at the other location. And that so-called lawsuit or whatever they were going to do was going to fail anyway, because he didn't do any remedies at all pertaining to that. But what happened is that I started doing the remedies. And so what needed to be done next was I waited for the response of the remedies, and when they gave the response, I then had to exhaust those remedies. Now I'm exhausting those remedies with more information, right? So now I am upgrading the remedy and talking about the fact that the Federal Bureau of Prisons was the reason why he lost the first leg, and now they caused him to lose his second leg, and this is just ridiculous, right? And on top of that, what even makes it worse is Beaumont Low is not a medical facility. It's a regular facility. And they returned a severely sick person to Beaumont Low, right? A person who has a severe illness that if his wounds are not treated properly daily, he could die, right? So they cut him off here. They now need to treat his wound here daily. If this is not treated properly daily, they now have to cut up here and or he could die, right? And they returned him back to Beaumont Low. Guess for who to take care of? The other guys he are jailed with. So the young men who were taking care of him, lifting him up and taking him to shower and carrying him to feed and making him food and all of these things, who literally got tired of trying to do stuff that they didn't necessarily know how to do and had to bring him to me in the first place, they were back at work, right? Because now he has, 2 legs missing. So now they had to lift him up to get him in the shower because, the showers are stand-up showers. They're usually filthy. And if he tries anything in there, he could get an infection. So they have to lift him up, put him on a chair in the shower, have a nice clean chair specifically for him to put him in the shower, lift him from his wheelchair into the shower to take care of this man and all of these things. And they're not trained to do that. Okay, there's no training. They don't know what they're doing. They're just doing their best for this man. And so from the time they returned him to this facility, this is the kind of things that these guys got to do. And they got to improvise, right? So they got to tie plastic bags over his newly amputated leg and tie it tight to make sure that no water or soap or anything doesn't get into it, to make sure he gets the kind of treatment and care that he needs. And this is horrible. And so now, in the new remedy, I'm telling staff that, they are so out of their minds, right, that they're not doing their job. I have to tell staff that in his remedies. So now I'm forwarding emails in response to the first remedy that I sent to the warden and them so that they could look at these things. And I'm exhausting his remedy up to the next level, the regional office, telling them that, hey, this prison, these guys here lost their minds. This guy should not be at this facility. He should be at a medical facility. Not just because he needs people to properly take care of his wounds and his legs, but also because can't risk him getting new infections, right? And staff at this prison and the one before already have bundled the job twice when it comes to protecting this guy from losing his legs, okay, and or his life. They really, failed, so. Right? So I'm explaining this stuff in remedies, in exhausting, letting them know that this stuff is going to go all the way anyway. Right? And what happens is, I guess they got the message. And within 2 weeks or so after that, so these guys had to do that, take care of him for about another 2 weeks or so, if I could recall correctly, before they then shipped him off, this guy off to a medical facility where everyone at that facility, whether it's regular housed incarcerated persons there or the staff, all are kind of like trained in helping folks who come there for medical treatment with their medical issues, right? And, that's how the administrative remedy process, and knowing how to do that process and do it properly, saved this man's life. Unfortunately, we couldn't save his legs because we did it too late, but we should not have had to. But that is why learning how to do the administrative remedy process is extremely important, okay? Is because it saves lives, saves limbs, and so on. Had we done that earlier, as soon as he had gotten his scratch or his sore, if that information was brought to me and I knew how severe of diabetic he was, and that the prison already bundled the job and caused him to lose his first leg, I would have then been able to start the remedy saying, hey, this guy needs your attention immediately, even though it's a scratch. You should know from your prior mistake that ignoring his scratches result in him losing legs. So please do your job ahead of time this time and help this guy out, right? And he would not have lost his leg, And so there you go. Again, these stories, I present them to you as a part of training within learning how to do the administrative remedy process, because it's not just about filling out a form, okay? It's not just about that. It's about knowing and understanding everyone who you are dealing with in that process, okay? Knowing and understanding. And this one I would close with saying to you, no matter what that man did, that old man did, whether he was a or whatever, I don't care if he shot someone. The system sentenced him, the judge sentenced him to time in prison. Maybe it was 5 years, maybe it was 10, somewhere in that range. I can't necessarily remember. But the U.S. system sentenced him to a range of time in prison. That is what he was supposed to do. That was supposed to be his punishment. Staying in that prison or in the Federal Bureau of Prisons for a period of time. And what ended up happening was he ended up being sentenced to that time in prison, whether it's 5 or 10 years, plus his 2 legs. That's what I'll leave you with to think about when you as you're doing learning this system to learn how to do remedies to help people. David Simpson, see you soon.